In this video lesson, we'll explore changes socially and politically in the newly found republic after the American Revolution. The American Revolution was more an accelerated evolution of the political and social framework which existed in England's American colonies. It was not a sudden or revolutionary transformation. During the conflict, the work and private lives of most people proceeded as usual, although the revolution will affect changes in gender roles, social customs, political institutions, and perceptions about society and government. Patriot elites replaced aristocratic elites, which brought egalitarian ideas and sentiments into the exchange. In the 1770s, Americans were heavily influenced by political theorists to whom republicanism meant popular elections, representative government, free, virtuous citizens who placed civic values above their own personal interests, a government by, for, and of the people that was accessible to the people, and the idea that republics could succeed only in small geographic areas and populations. Thus, they rejected and ridiculed aristocratic pretensions of superiority. Republican ideals of social democracy began to foster the growth of trade organizations for skilled artisans and prompted many states to abolish very antiquated inheritance laws of primogeniture. In some New England states, the Congregational Church remained the established religion. In the South, however, the Anglican Church was disestablished, de-Anglicanized, and renamed as the Protestant Episcopal Church. In 1789, Virginia's legislature passed the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which formally provided for the separation of church and state, a move which influences other states to eventually do the same. After 1776, the ideals of the American Revolution about natural equality and liberty began to erode the institution of slavery, prompting some slaves to petition or sue state legislatures for their freedom or to attempt to run away from their owners. In 1780, Pennsylvania became the first state to partially abolish slavery by statute, providing for gradual emancipation for those born on or after March 1, 1780, and fully abolishing slavery by 1847. Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware all rejected general emancipation bills. Their economies were too dependent on slave labor. In the Deep South, Georgia and the Carolinas, abolition of slavery and a free biracial society was unthinkable, even though Southerners understood that slavery was incongruent with revolutionary ideology. After the 1780s, in the North, support for emancipation took on symbolic importance and grew over a long period of time, just as the South became increasingly dedicated to the preservation of slavery. In both the North and South, however, laws prevented free blacks from owning property, educating their children, or holding certain jobs. The Founding Fathers chose to sacrifice some of their Republican ideas of equality to political expediency, avoiding a fight over the abolition of slavery in order to preserve the new Union. Questions existed over whether free blacks who already owned property should receive the franchise, and in New Jersey, they were able to vote for some time, but were disenfranchised there in 1807. Ideals of equality were only partially extended to women, as they were excluded from voting, except briefly in New Jersey, where in 1790 unmarried women could vote for a time. Disenfranchisement of women was a practice that few questioned, even among propertied women. However, their exclusion from politics did not prevent their assuming other civic roles or responsibilities. By the 1790s, essayists gave rise to the concept of Republican motherhood, the role of virtuous women in promoting good morals and instilling Republican ideals in the future male citizenry. Essayists claimed that in Republican marriages, women could reform the manners and morals of men, advising young women to use sexual chastity in courtship to increase public virtue and morals in men. Essayists claimed that applying the concept of Republican motherhood in love and courtship empowered women without altering traditional gender roles. It did, however, support controversial claims by women that access to education was critical to instruct their sons to be virtuous citizens. Women's arguments linking their need to education with marriage and the public good worked to improve female literacy and knowledge, but only in terms of improved domestic duty. In May of 1776, the Second Continental Congress directed all states to draft constitutions based on the authority of the people, documents spelling out liberties, rights, and obligations of citizens and government. Two common features embodied in all state constitutions were that government by the consent of the governed was present, and government existed to promote the people's welfare. Massachusetts called a special convention to draft its constitution before presenting it to the people for ratification, a procedure later used to draft and ratify our federal constitution. Most state constitutions provided for bicameral legislatures, which meant two houses, limited the powers of their courts, and created weak governors. The latter limitations ultimately proved unworkable. Weak governors could not convene or dismiss the legislature at will, were unable to veto legislation, and could not ensure loyalty through patronage or land grants, and most were restricted to one-year terms. In bicameral legislatures, the lower house handled matters of routine daily governance, making them responsible to popular majorities through annual elections. Virginia's Constitution contained a Bill of Rights listing basic civil liberties and civil rights, though 6 of other states are going to follow suit as well. Many elected representatives in the new state governments came from newly enfranchised western districts, signaling an emerging democratic political shift from the older established eastern seaboard districts to interior districts. This political shift led to successful movements to relocate the state capitals of New Hampshire, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia further west. Government officials defined the requirements of citizenship and limited democratic government by restricting the franchise to people who owned property. Restricting the franchise was rarely questioned because it was believed that property owners possessed the necessary independence of mind to make wise political decisions and a greater sense of community and public interest because they owned property. Property qualifications disenfranchised approximately 25 to 50% of adult males in the states. However, those without property still enjoyed their civil liberties and civil rights. Various state bills of rights applied to all individuals who had entered into a state of society. A free person was entitled to life, liberty, property, and freedom of conscience. Most states did not include equality language in their Bill of Rights, reflecting the radical implications of such language for the institution of slavery. Going forward in class, we'll next be looking at the development of the first government of the United States, the Articles of Confederation.